Most people think monsters are born. They're not. They are built.
Severed heads planted carefully facing a mother's bedroom window. Dozens of bodies meticulously stacked in a narrow dirt crawl space. When we look at crime scenes like these, our instinct is to label the people who created them as born monsters. We assume they operate on a chaotic frequency that has no connection to normal human logic. But look closer, and the chaos disappears. Instead, you find a logic known as trauma architecture. Every detail left behind at a crime scene is a direct physical manifestation of a killer's childhood upbringing. The path to understanding these killers leads past the crime scenes and directly to the specific parents who built them. Viewing these acts through the lens of parental architecture changes how we see serial murder. It removes the illusion of random violence and reveals predictable equations of cause and effect. From the outside, Jeffrey Dahmer's mid-century childhood in suburban Ohio looked ordinary. But behind the doors of a pristine household, the family was fracturing under the weight of depression and constant screaming matches. Dahmer was left entirely alone. His mother eventually left without a forwarding address, and his father buried himself in chemistry work. The only real interaction his father offered was teaching a 10-year-old Jeffrey how to chemically bleach and preserve animal bones. That childhood lesson dictated his adult pathology. When Dahmer began killing, he didn't do it out of blinding rage. He drugged and kept his victims' bodies as a twisted mechanism to ensure that people could never physically leave him again. Decades earlier, Albert Fish experienced a different kind of parental discarding. After his father died, his mother decided she could no longer afford him, dropping 5-year-old Albert off at a Stark, Washington orphanage to save money. The orphanage was a house of constant physical discipline. As teachers whipped the boys until they bled, something broke in Fish's developing brain. He found that he enjoyed the abuse, permanently fusing the concepts of extreme pain and sexual pleasure together. When a child faces total abandonment, the developing mind enters a state of deep desperation, inventing horrifying new mechanisms to manufacture physical attachment and sensory stimulation. Edmund Kemper grew up trapped in a basement, locked away by a mother who constantly degraded him. She screamed through the floorboards that he was a weirdo, instilling the belief that college women would always find him disgusting. Every killing Kemper committed was a mapped response to that verbal abuse. He targeted young female students, the exact demographic his mother worked alongside at UC Santa Cruz, as a meticulous way to punish her. The killings only stopped when he achieved his ultimate act of retaliation. Kemper beat his sleeping mother to death with a hammer, decapitated her, and used her head as a dartboard, destroying the source of his programming. John Wayne Gacy faced a similar systematic dismantling. His alcoholic father stripped him of his worth through regular physical beatings and verbal humiliation, calling him a sissy and a complete failure. To survive that childhood powerlessness, Gacy developed a deadly overcompensation. His adult obsession with luring young men and torturing them for hours was an attempt to mask deep inadequacies behind a facade of total control. Constant parental devaluation hollows a child out. It creates an insatiable adult deficit that can only be filled by asserting total dominance over the vulnerable. Henry Lee Lucas was born into a childhood of staggering brutality. To make money, his mother forced him into girls' clothing, parading him through town so she could sell him to strangers. The physical destruction inside their dirt floor cabin was just as severe. When his brother slashed his face with a knife, his mother ignored the infection until the eye eventually burst and required surgical removal. This lifelong commodification destroyed his ability to comprehend human worth. He learned that people are simply objects to be used and discarded, a lesson that fueled his remorseless killing sprees as an adult. When a parent treats a child purely as a disposable object, they teach that child the language of disposing of others without a second thought. Understanding these psychological origins is not an alibi. These men maintained moral agency, the ability to choose right from wrong, and they chose to inflict pain. Their childhood trauma does not erase the devastating reality that every victim they buried was also someone's innocent child. Ultimately, the killers themselves were consumed by the violence they perpetuated. They met grim fates, either beaten to death in prison or strapped into the electric chair. But the broader warning remains clear. Extreme, untreated childhood abuse does not simply fade away, it metastasizes into catastrophic public harm. Long before a serial killer ever takes a stranger's life, their parents have already murdered the child they might have been.